You know what? I'm going to say something right now that's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable, but someone needs to say it. Maybe has a problem. A massive, glaring, absolutely infuriating problem that they refuse to acknowledge. And Friday night on SmackDown, that problem was on full display for the entire world to see. Picture this. You're Drew McIntyre. You've clawed your way back from being fired. You've rebuilt yourself into one of the most legitimate badasses in professional wrestling. You've proven time and time again that you deserve to be at the very top of this company. And then, in one moment, in one decision, everything you've worked for gets thrown out the window because you dared to confront the golden boy. Nick Aldis, the supposed impartial general manager of SmackDown, suspended Drew McIntyre right in the middle of a Cody Rhodes match. Not backstage, not in an office. Right there in the ring in front of millions of people while Cody was competing. And here's the part that should make your blood boil. Drew was doing exactly what any self-respecting competitor would do. He was standing up for himself. He was demanding the respect he's earned. He was being the Scottish warrior that made us all fall in love with him in the first place. But apparently that's not allowed anymore. Apparently, if you're not part of management's chosen few, you don't get to fight back. You don't get to defend yourself. You just get suspended and silenced. Before I tear this entire situation apart piece by piece, I need you to do something for me right now. Drop a comment below and answer this question honestly. Do you think Drew McIntyre deserved to be suspended? Because I'm telling you right now, by the time we're done here, you're going to see just how corrupt, how biased, and how absolutely rigged this entire situation really is. Hit that like button if you're ready to hear the truth. Subscribe to the channel if you want more content that isn't afraid to call out the BS when we see it. And buckle up, because what I'm about to expose is going to change the way you look at WWE forever. Let me set the scene for those who might have missed it, because every single detail of what happened matters. Cody Rhodes was in the middle of a match on SmackDown. Standard stuff, right? The American Nightmare doing what he does best, working the crowd, executing that picture-perfect wrestling style that's made him a household name. Everything seemed perfectly normal, perfectly routine. The match was flowing smoothly. And then, out of absolutely nowhere, the arena goes dark for just a split second. That familiar sound hits. Drew McIntyre's music explodes through the speakers, and the entire building erupts. Not with boos, not with confusion, with genuine excitement. Because love him or hate him, everyone respects what Drew McIntyre brings to the table. He's intensity personified. He's legitimacy personified. When Drew walks through that curtain, you know something important is about to happen. So Drew makes his way down that ramp with purpose. This isn't a casual stroll. This isn't showboating. This is a man on a mission. His eyes are locked on Cody Rhodes. His jaw is clenched. Every muscle in his body is tense with barely contained rage. And the crowd, they can feel it. They know something big is about to go down. Drew slides into the ring and you can see it in Cody's face. That moment of recognition. That moment where he knows exactly why Drew is there. Because this isn't random. This isn't some spontaneous decision. Drew and Cody have history. Real, legitimate, can't-be-ignored history. The kind of history that's been brewing for months. The kind of history that doesn't just disappear because WWE pretends it doesn't exist. Now here's where everything goes completely off the rails. Before Drew can even touch Cody, before any real confrontation can happen, Nick Aldis comes charging down that ramp like his hair is on fire. And listen, I need you to pay attention to this part because this is where the bias becomes crystal clear. Aldis doesn't assess the situation. He doesn't ask questions. He doesn't try to understand context or motivation. He immediately, without hesitation, without any due process whatsoever, suspends Drew McIntyre on the spot. Right there, in the middle of the ring, in front of God and everyone watching at home. An immediate suspension for a man who hadn't even done anything yet beyond showing up. Think about that for a second. Drew gets suspended not for what he did, but for what Aldis assumed he was going to do. That's guilty until proven innocent. That's punishment before crime. That's everything wrong with authority figures in wrestling distilled into one catastrophically bad decision. And here's where I start getting really angry. Because the double standard is so blatant, so obvious, so in your face that I cannot believe WWE thought they could get away with this without massive backlash. Where was this energy from Nick Aldis when other superstars were causing chaos? Where was this immediate, decisive action when the bloodline was running roughshod over the entire roster for literally years? Where was this strict enforcement of the rules when people were getting jumped in parking lots, attacked during interviews, and assaulted in catering? I'll tell you exactly where it was. Nowhere. Because those situations involved different people. Those situations didn't threaten management's carefully constructed narrative. Those situations didn't risk derailing the Cody Rhodes Express that WWE has been pushing at full speed, regardless of who gets run over in the process. Let's talk about Cody for a minute. Because his name is at the center of this entire controversy, and we need to address the elephant in the room. I want to be absolutely clear about something right from the start. I respect Cody Rhodes as a performer. The man is talented. The man has worked incredibly hard to get where he is. His journey from leaving WWE, to building himself up on the independent scene, to co-founding AEW, to returning to WWE as a conquering hero, that's a legitimately impressive story. Nobody can take that away from him. But here's where we need to inject some reality into this conversation. Since Cody returned to WWE, he has been positioned as untouchable. Not just as a top guy, but as the guy, the face of the company, the chosen one. The person who WWE has decided will lead them into the future regardless of what anyone else does. Regardless of how many other incredibly talented people are on the roster. And look, being positioned at the top isn't inherently a problem. Somebody has to be the face of the company. But when that positioning extends to having authority figures like Nick Aldis actively protecting you from legitimate competition, that's where it crosses the line from booking to bias. Cody doesn't need Nick Aldis to fight his battles. Cody is more than capable of handling himself in the ring. He's proven that time and time again. So why does Aldis feel this overwhelming need to step in and suspend Drew McIntyre before anything even happens? What is he protecting Cody from? Competition? Challenge? The possibility that someone might actually threaten his spot at the top? Because that's what this really looks like. This looks like management circling the wagons around their golden boy and eliminating anyone who might potentially derail their plans. But wait, there's more to this story that makes it even more infuriating. Let's talk about Drew McIntyre's perspective for a minute, because his side of this situation matters just as much as anyone else's. Drew is not some rookie making impulsive decisions. This is not some hothead who can't control his emotions. Drew McIntyre is one of the most professional, most dedicated, most respected performers in the entire industry. This is a man who lost everything when he got released from WWE years ago. He could have given up. He could have disappeared from wrestling entirely. But he didn't. He went out and reinvented himself on the independent circuit. He became a legitimate star in promotions all over the world. He worked harder than almost anyone else in the business to prove that his first run in WWE wasn't indicative of his true potential. And then he came back, and he became WWE champion. And he proved every single doubter wrong. So when a man with that history, with that track record, with that level of professionalism decides to confront someone, you have to believe there's a legitimate reason. Drew doesn't do anything without purpose. If he showed up during Cody's match, it's because Cody did something to warrant it. Maybe Cody disrespected him. Maybe Cody cost him an opportunity. Maybe Cody said something that crossed a line. The specific details might vary, but the principle remains the same. Drew had cause. Drew had justification. And instead of allowing that confrontation to play out, instead of letting these two grown men settle their differences like competitors, Nick Aldis stepped in and removed Drew from the equation entirely. That's not management. That's manipulation. That's favoritism. That's everything that's wrong with authority figures, having too much power and using it to protect certain people while punishing others. Now, some of you watching this are probably thinking, okay, but Drew did interfere in a match, and there should be consequences for that. And you know what? On the surface, that's a fair point. There should be rules in wrestling. There should be consequences for breaking those rules. I'm not arguing against the concept of structure and accountability. What I'm arguing against is selective enforcement. What I'm arguing against is rules that only apply to certain people while others get a free pass. Because if we're going to suspend Drew McIntyre for showing up during someone's match, then we need to suspend everyone who does that. Every single person. No exceptions, no favoritism, no double standards. Let me give you some examples of situations where people interfered in matches and faced zero consequences. How many times did the bloodline interfere in matches during Roman's reign? Dozens? Hundreds? How often did we see Jey Uso or Jimmy Uso or Solo Sikoa run down and help Roman win matches? Constantly, week after week after week. And what happened? Nothing. No suspensions, no fines. Occasional disqualifications, sure, but those actually helped Roman because he kept his title. Where was the strict enforcement then? Where was Nick Aldis's predecessor? Demanding accountability? It didn't exist because Roman was protected. Roman was the chosen champion, and the rules bent around him. And now we're seeing the exact same pattern with Cody Rhodes. The faces might change, but the favoritism remains constant. Here's another example that's going to make some people uncomfortable. How many times has Cody himself gotten involved in other people's business? How many times has he inserted himself into situations that didn't concern him? How many times has he shown up where he wasn't invited or expected? I'm not saying Cody is a villain. I'm saying the standard is being applied inconsistently. If showing up during someone's match or segment is worthy of immediate suspension, then everyone who does it should face the same consequence. But that's not what happens. What happens is WWE decides who they want to protect and who they're willing to sacrifice, and they enforce rules accordingly. The timing of this suspension is also incredibly suspicious if you're paying attention to the bigger picture. Think about where we are in the WWE calendar. Think about the major events coming up. Survivor Series is on the horizon. Royal Rumble is getting closer. WrestleMania season will be here before we know it. These are the most important months in WWE's entire year. These are the months where storylines get built, where champions get crowned, where legends are made. And conveniently, right when things are heating up, right when Drew McIntyre could potentially position himself as a legitimate threat to Cody Rhodes, he gets suspended, taken off television, removed from the equation. And who benefits from that? Cody. Management. Anyone who doesn't want Drew disrupting their carefully planned narrative. This isn't just bad booking, this is damage control. This is WWE looking at their roster and saying, we can't have Drew McIntyre becoming too popular right now. We can't have him overshadowing Cody. We can't have the fans rallying behind someone who wasn't part of our original plan. So let's suspend him. Let's take him off TV for a few weeks. Let's cool down any momentum he might have been building. And by the time he comes back, hopefully everyone will have forgotten about this, and we can continue with our scheduled programming. That's what this feels like. That's what this looks like. And if you can't see that, then you're not paying close. Enough attention to the patterns that WWE has established over the years. Let's talk about Nick Aldis specifically, because he's the one who made this decision, and his credibility as general manager is now completely shot in my eyes. When Aldis was first announced as the SmackDown general manager, there was genuine excitement from the wrestling community. Here's a guy who had an incredible career. A guy who held the NWA World Heavyweight Championship for over 1,000 days. A guy who understands the wrestling business from every angle. A guy who we thought would bring legitimacy, fairness, and credibility to the general manager role. But what are we seeing instead? Emotional reactionary decisions, blatant favoritism, a complete inability to remain impartial when it matters most. A good general manager, a fair general manager, would have handled this situation completely differently. First, he would have let the situation play out at least to some degree. Let Drew say what he came to say. Let Cody respond. See where things go naturally. Then, if it escalates beyond acceptable boundaries, step in and separate them. After the show, bring both men into the office. Hear both sides of the story. Understand the context, the history, the motivations behind the confrontation, then make an informed decision about appropriate consequences. Maybe that's a fine. Maybe that's a suspension. Maybe that's booking them in a match to settle things properly. But it's a measured, thoughtful response based on actual information rather than assumption and bias. But that's not what Nick Aldis did. He saw Drew McIntyre approaching Cody Rhodes and immediately went into protection mode. He didn't consider Drew's perspective. He didn't care about context or history. He just saw his golden boy potentially being threatened and took the most extreme action available to eliminate that threat. That's not management. That's being a biased authority figure who's using his power to manipulate outcomes rather than ensure fair competition. And the worst part is that WWE probably thinks this makes Aldis look strong and decisive. It doesn't. It makes him look weak and scared. It makes him look like someone who doesn't trust the performers to handle their own business. It makes him look like exactly what everyone feared he might become. Just another authority figure serving management's agenda rather than serving the locker room. Here's what absolutely needs to happen moving forward if WWE wants to salvage any credibility from this situation. First, Drew McIntyre's suspension needs to be addressed properly. Either it gets lifted immediately with an apology, or there needs to be a storyline explanation that actually makes sense and doesn't just feel like management protecting Cody. Second, there needs to be a clear public establishment of what the rules actually are on SmackDown, what behavior is acceptable, what behavior crosses the line, and most importantly, those rules need to apply equally to everyone. Cody Rhodes doesn't get special protection. Drew McIntyre doesn't get targeted enforcement. Everyone plays by the same rules. Period. Third, Nick Aldis needs to show that he can be impartial. That means making tough calls even when they affect people management likes. That means holding everyone accountable regardless of their position on the card. That means proving that he's actually a general manager for the entire roster, not just a bodyguard for Cody Rhodes. Because right now, that's what it looks like. It looks like Aldis is there specifically to protect Cody from any real challenge or competition, and that's not sustainable. Eventually, the fans are going to turn on that. Eventually, people are going to see through it. And when they do, both Cody and Aldis are going to suffer the consequences. If you've made it this far in the video, you're clearly as invested in this situation as I am, and I appreciate that. Make sure you hit that like button if you agree with anything I've said. Subscribe to the channel if you want more honest, unfiltered wrestling content that isn't afraid to call out the problems in this industry. And most importantly, drop a comment telling me your thoughts. Do you think Drew was justified in confronting Cody? Do you think the suspension was fair? Do you think Nick Aldis is doing a good job as general manager? Let's have a real conversation about this because these are the conversations that need to happen. Wrestling fans deserve better than biased authority figures and protected golden boys. We deserve real competition, real stakes, and real consequences that apply equally to everyone. And until WWE figures that out, we're going to keep calling them out every single time they screw it